Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Hello, everyone. This hour on Verbling, the next and last in my great short story series about J.G. Ballard's classic short story, Manhole 69. We're going to just look at the ending. We've already read it, but we're going to look at the ending. And we're going to discuss it, of course. We'll probably just read the very end, and we'll be discussing the story for the hour. It's a very interesting story. Even if you haven't read the beginning, we're going to go over the ending, and you can still take part in the discussion. So we'll recap what you've missed, and then we'll also talk about what you think this story is trying to say. What is its vision for the future, and how right do you think the author was? Because this was written quite a while ago. So we'll be talking about that in just a minute. First, a little about me. I'm John Eric, your Verbling teacher for this hour. I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. By the way, 3 quick rules to help you participate. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up. That means turn off your microphone when you're not speaking, so we can keep the classroom quiet. Tune in to the new words you're learning. Use them as actively as you can so that I can give you lots of feedback and I can correct you. Finally, open up to your classmates. Relax and fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. And that is a little bit about me. Let's find out a little bit about you. Hello, you. Let's start with Laura. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thanks.
You're having a good hair day today. It's nice to see.
Yes.
Where can I get one of those? I want one of those.
Yes, I suppose that you have to go to, I don't know, Africa? I'm not sure.
Aren't these in South America?
Or could be. I don't know. I'm looking it up in encyclopedia or something like this, because now I'm curious about it.
I want you to find out and get back to me, because I'd like one of those.
Okay.
You can spend all day experimenting different hairstyles, and also help him to see, because it looks like he's going to have a very difficult time driving with all that hair. Let's say hello to also Sylvia and Daniel. Hello, Sylvia and Daniel. Welcome back. And hello. And while I'm saying hello to all of you, let's take a look at the material. So there is our J.G. Ballard. And basically, what we're going to do is we read everything except the ending. And it's quite short. So we're going to pick up with the ending. You'll catch you up if there's anything you've missed, and we're going to talk about J.G. Ballard's vision, what the story means, and how close to the truth is his vision of the future. Okay, so Laura, I don't know if you were in the other classes. I think you weren't. Am I right?
I was in one class.
In one class. Okay, great.
Last week, but I don't think that we read about him.
Okay, no problem. So let's bring the class up to date. Okay, let's do that. A little recap. So here, you can see I divided the story into 6 parts. Every time we stopped reading, I called that a new part. So part 5 was maybe the biggest. That was in the last class. And I don't think you were in the last class. Daniel, were you here on Tuesday? I don't think so. You were here last week, but not on Tuesday.
No.
All right. So you missed a chunk.
Yeah, but I was reading.
Oh, okay, good, excellent. And Sylvia, how much of the story did you have a chance to read so far?
Anything.
Uh-oh.
And I was haven't the link for the document because it's not working.
Haven't or don't have?
Haven't. Don't have.
Don't have.
I don't have the link.
That's it. I will give it to you right now. Give me a second, and I'll put it in the. I'll put the right one in the window. Give me just a minute. There we go. And there it is inside of the
Yes.
Hangout chat. And as far as the regular chat goes, I can't get it to work. I can try. The Verbling chat doesn't seem to be working. And it's weird because it's only in that group hangout. Well, I put it there. You can see it there. So, let's do this, everyone. Let's do a little recap up to part 6 and then read part 6 together. Okay? So, Daniel. Actually, wait. Laura, let me start with you, Laura.
Okay.
What's the general situation? What's the story about in general, from what you remember? Let's start there. And then you will fill in the details.
I'm so sorry because I don't know how is the, the story about.
Oh, but last week, remember? You were here.
But we didn't read this. I was with, it was another type of class. We were doing different things.
Ah, okay. I thought you were in the reading class. My fault.
No.
Daniel?
Till now, I'm going to try to be here because I think that is something really interesting.
It's good, although I was going to stop doing these classes because
Why?
because I can't do the class with 3 people. It's not enough. Verbally won't let me. I have to have 5 or 6, and then I can do it. But if you're going to make a commitment, then I can keep going.
Yes, if I know, yes, I'm really interested in this
okay.
because
I know
with
that
you in any class we learn a lot, and I think that is important to read in English because
the most important thing you can do is read. The most important thing.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, you learn a lot of vocabulary. You see the grammar in context.
Exactly.
And it's a real proof of English.
In fact, according to the research, the way that you really learn a language is through reading. Yes. Once you're above the elementary level, it all comes from you. At the lower level, you have to do a lot of listening. But once you get to intermediate, even lower intermediate, you really learn through acquiring. There's only so much a teacher can teach you. It's quite limited. What you really do is you acquire all of this vocabulary. And then you have to be in a situation where someone can help turn it from knowledge floating around your head somewhere to something active that you can use. So the most important thing you can do according to research is read as much as possible. You're absolutely right. That's where you pick up probably 90% comes from reading. In the beginning, listening, and then reading. So I agree completely. Well, now that we've got 4, we're okay. 4 is a good number. Less than 4, it's a little difficult. The classes have to have more than that. But 4 is okay. I can do it with 4. So let's do it like this. Daniel, all the weight is on your shoulders, Daniel.
Okay.
You've got to keep it a little bit short. And yes. Saud, maybe you were here in the last class. Were you here on Tuesday in this class, Saud? I think you were. Hello, Saud? Uh-oh, I don't hear Saud. Uh-oh, Saud, maybe your microphone is not working. But you can write in the chat window, just so I know that you can hear me. So, Daniel, let's give a little recap. Oh, I think he's going to rejoin. A little recap. And maybe you could just give a general sense of what the story is about first. Mm-hmm. Then we'll talk specifically about what happened in part 5. Okay? So, what can you tell us?
Yeah, okay. It's a sci-fi story. The main characters are 2 doctors, a doctor and a assistant, and 3 patients. The doctor performs because
you're talking about the past. He performed.
Performs a surgery in 3 patients. The surgery consists to cut some nervous from
Nerves.
the nerves from the medulla, and they they won't sleep anymore.
Won't
They
be
won't
able
they
to sleep.
won't be okay. They won't be able to fall asleep
Right, right.
anymore.
Excuse me, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Hi, Saud. How are you?
I'm fine. What about you?
Good. Saud, you were here on Tuesday, weren't you? In this class?
Yes. I remember that manhole
Excellent.
experiment. Small room without ventilation system without windows. Yes, I remember.
Okay, very good. So we're just doing a little recap for Laura and for Sylvia. And then we're going to read the ending together in just a moment. Okay? So I put your summary in the chat window, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty accurate. Sci-fi story about two doctors and a patient. Now, this surgery that was performed, were the patients sick? Did they need surgery?
No, I think it's a kind of experiment.
Experiment, exactly.
Experiment, yes. And the story is about their behavior.
Exactly. Their behavior. So what happens after? The story takes place when? How long after the surgery? Do you remember? Is it the same day as the surgery?
No.
Yeah.
Weeks.
A few weeks after, that's right.
It's in a big hospital in the middle of the anything.
Right.
It's a little creepy, I think.
It's a little creepy. Why creepy? I agree.
I don't know. In my imagination, creepy. It's I don't know. It's maybe an old building.
You're absolutely right. It's creepy. You're absolutely right, and that's part of the story. That's part of the author, J.G. Ballard. Everything he writes is creepy. So, what was creepy about this story?
Maybe the patient are beginning to think they are a kind of gods.
Interesting. Do they think of themselves like gods?
Yes.
Okay,
because
very interesting.
They never are tired. They are physically very well. They can play all the time.
Play games and chess and
in the
stuff
gym,
like that.
in the gymnasium, play chess, doing lot of experiments from the doctor, like
Let's talk about that.
Questions.
Let's talk about that for a second, the experiments. So first, let me just make sure everyone follows the story so far. But we're going to talk about the experiment because part 5 was about one particular experiment. And then, when that's clear, we can read the ending together. So, Sylvia, is this story a realistic story or a kind of fantasy story?
I think it's something of fantasy story. Is it more about science fiction? Science?
So,
because I was reading New York Times review of J.G. Ballard.
Right.
And it started with something about people came from Mars.
Yes.
So I haven't caught what is about the story. But I think...
Well, based on what Daniel said, what's the main incident that took place? The story is about something that took place 3 weeks ago.
There was an operation?
Exactly. So it's about an operation, an experimental operation. And the purpose was not to cure 6 people. The purpose was they think they found a way, doctors found a way, to end humanity's need to sleep. And this was meant to be an evolution. We would gain. I know. I know. You would die. You'd be so happy. You'd have time for everything.
But I really love sleep.
No sleep. And the patients also don't get tired. They don't sleep and they don't get tired. So that was the plan. That was the experiment. And it happened 3 weeks before the story began. And as Daniel said, the doctors are observing them and they're subjecting them to various kinds of tests. So, Saud, are you there? Saud?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Hello, sir. Saud, do you remember the experiment, the last experiment the doctors performed on the patients? Or it seemed to be an experiment. We're not really sure if it happened for real or not. But what unusual thing happened in part 5 on Tuesday's class? Do you remember?
I think he make the room smaller without
Exactly.
windows, without
Exactly.
ventilation system also.
Right.
Okay.
So they were in a big gymnasium, and suddenly, what happened to the room?
Actually, I wasn't to be in that class until the end because I
That's
have
okay.
internet interruption.
No problem.
Okay,
Well,
but
the general idea was,
he changed the room totally, but I don't know what happened. The
so,
end of the story.
well, you said it before. What you said was absolutely right. They were in a giant gymnasium. The lights are always on because they don't want to have the patients see darkness or even look outside the windows, anything. They don't want them to expose them to anything that might remind them of sleep. Suddenly, the doctors leave and the room gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So small that it's like they're in a manhole in the street. The place where the workers go down and fix the sewers. They're in this tiny space, and there's no air. They're looking around for the ventilation. All the ventilation has disappeared, and they're in this tiny, tiny little space. And they think that this is an experiment, that the doctors are trying to test their ability to cope. But at the very end of part 5, Daniel, what happened when the doctor, the assistant, returned to the gymnasium? Were they in a small room?
No.
Daniel, what happened?
No. It's a regular room. It's maybe it was their imagination.
Mm-hmm.
No?
It seemed to be that all of them imagined the exact same thing. It seemed to be. And we were left at the end of the class wondering, how is it possible? How could 3 people have the same dream or the same delusion?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we left off. That's where we stopped. So, Ishmael, are you following the general idea of the story so far? Because you probably weren't here to read it.
Actually, no.
Does the general idea make sense so far?
Yes.
So, you can ask questions at any time, all right?
Okay.
And you should definitely go and read the rest of the story on your own.
Yes.
But let's take a look at the ending. Now that we know everything that led up to this moment, let's see how it ends. So remember, the last thing that happened was the patients thought the doctors had disappeared, and the room got very small. But in reality, when one of the doctors came back to the room, and we expected the patients to be in this small space, the space was exactly the way it was before. Daniel, was there anything... What were the patients doing? Was there anything unusual going on with the patients?
I can't remember.
Okay, let's find out. So let's go to the very end of part 5. And let's pick it up at the very end of part 5 when the doctor returns. Give me a second. We're going to pick it up a little bit before the ending here. Oh yeah, here we go. We're going to pick it up where he's talking to Morley as the assistant. Okay, I'm going to read this little part here to give you a sense of what happened to the patients when they thought the doctors were gone. And then we're going to go around the room and we're going to see what happens when the doctors return, and then we'll read the ending together. So this is the context. Gorell and Avery hesitated. They were the patients, two of the patients. Then swung around to look at each wall in turn, scanning it from floor to ceiling. So they're looking at the walls because they're trying to find a way out. They feel like they're trapped in this little space. Avery ran his hands over the heavy masonry. Masonry because the walls have changed from a smooth kind of texture to stone. So they all...
That's concrete?
Concrete, yeah. Or concrete or stone, but cold, hard stone. So the walls have changed into something else. So masonry is when you work with stone. It's a way to say stone. So they ran their hands over the walls, the masonry, then knelt down and felt the floor, digging his fingers at the rough stone slabs. Gorell crouched beside him, scrabbling at the thin seams of dirt. So suddenly, they weren't in a gymnasium, they're in this dungeon, and the walls are made of stone, and the floor has dirt in between the cracks in the floor, and they're trying to get out. Lang, that's another patient, backed out of their way into a corner and watched them impassively. His face was calm and motionless, but in his left temple a single vein fluttered insanely. The temple is on the side of your head, so one of his veins is twitching like a muscle spasm. So obviously something's going on. When they finally stood up, staring at each other unsteadily, he flung himself between them at the opposite wall. He threw himself at the wall. "Neil! Neil!" he shouted. Neil is the doctor who performed the surgery. He pounded angrily on the wall with his fists. "Neil! Neil!" Above him, the light began to fade. So suddenly, they're in this dungeon and it's getting dark. Daniel, you take the first shift.
Okay. Morley closed the door of the surgery office behind him and went over to the desk. Though it was 3:15 a.m., Neil was probably awake, working on the latest material in the office next to his bedroom. Fortunately, that afternoon's test cards, freshly marked by one of the interns, had only just reached his in-tray. Reached his in-tray.
So in the old days, we didn't have inboxes because there was no email. We had in-trays. That's where you put letters on your desk, the in-tray. So Morley is the assistant.
Morley
he left. Yeah.
Sorry. Morley picked out Lang's folder and started to sort through the cards.
Who is Lang?
A patient.
He's one of the patients. He's looking at the patient's folder. Okay.
He suspected that Lang's response to some of the keywords and suggestions triggered lying disguises in the question. Disguise.
That's it. Disguised.
Disguised in the question's forms might throw illuminating sidelights onto the real motives behind his equation of sleep and death. The communicating door to the other orderly room opened and an intern looked in. "Do you want me to take over in the gym, Doctor?" Morley waved him away. Don't bother. I'm going back in a I'm going back in a moment.
So what do you think? What's Morley doing with this file? Morley left the gymnasium. What's he doing at this moment? What's he looking for in the file, Daniel?
Maybe the answer of the lunch in a regular job, a daily job. No.
What do you mean,
Mm,
daily job? What's his daily job? I think you're right, but what do you mean? What's his daily job? What does he do every day?
to check the answer of the patient.
Yeah. So he's checking the records of the patient,
Mhm.
and he's thinking about the connection between sleep and death.
Mm-hmm.
Because earlier, one of the patients, these patients who now think of themselves kind of like gods, they don't need to sleep, they feel somehow superior, they can concentrate better. One of them mentioned that sleep is like death, and the brain can't distinguish between the two. So all of our neurosis in modern life comes from sleep. This was a theory by one of the patients, and Morley is thinking about that now and looking at the records of the patients. Saud, you were here. Why don't you take the second part here? See where we are?
Okay. He selected cards he wanted and began to initial his withdrawals, glad to get away from the glare of the arclights. He delayed his
Delayed.
return.
Careful. Delayed.
He delayed his return as long as he could, and it was 3:25 a.m. when he finally left the office and stepped back into the gymnasium.
And who's in the gymnasium, just to be clear? Who's there?
What?
Morley, the doctor, is returning to the gymnasium. And who is in the gymnasium? Saud.
Who?
What? Yeah, who's there?
Uh, I don't know.
The gymnasium is where the patients are. It's where the patients are spending the night. They have a chessboard, they have a record player, so they are monitored in this big gymnasium.
So
But
that
for
kind of gymnasium, especially for patients.
yes, exactly. That's right.
Okay, I
Keep
got it.
going.
The men were sitting where he had left them. Lang watched him approach, head pro- propped,
Propped.
propped comfortably on a cushion. Avery was slouched down in his armchair, nose in a magazine, while Coral hunched over the chessboard hidden behind the sofa. Anybody feel like Ovis?
And it would
Marley,
feel like coffee. Coffee.
sorry, the font is very small. Any feel like coffee? Morley called out, okay, deciding they needed some exercise. No one of them looked up or answered. Morley felt a flicker of
Annoyance.
annoyance, particularly at Lang, who was starting past him at the clock.
Not starting, but staring past. Staring.
Staring past him at the clock. Then he saw something that made him stop.
So, remember what happened before. The room got very small. But when the doctor came back, was the gymnasium small? Or was it exactly like he left it?
Mm, uh, uh, I
Does it
think
seem to
as
be
he
the same?
the same. I think.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Except all the patients are ignoring him. He's talking to them and they're just ignoring him like he doesn't exist. And he's getting a little bit angry about that because he already notices that they feel superior. But something made him stop. Laura, want to take the next section? By the way, let's say hello to. Let me say hello to Rus because I didn't see you come in. Hi, Rus. We're just finishing our story.
Hi, John.
You were here on Tuesday, weren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're all going to take a turn reading, and we have just the story is almost over, and we're going to talk about what J.G. Ballard's vision of the future is. His creepy vision of the future. Okay, Laura, take it away.
Okay. Lying on the polished floor, polished floor, 10 feet from the sofa was a cheese piece. He went over and picked it up. The piece was the Black King. He wondered how Worrell could be playing chess with one of the two essential pieces of the game missing, when he noticed 3 more pieces lying on the floor nearby. His eyes moved to where Worrell was sitting. Scattered over the floor, below the chair and sofa, was the rest of the set. Worrell was slumped over the stool.
Oh, slumped over the stool. The stool is the chair.
Stool. One of his elbows has slipped and the arm dangled between his knees. Knuckles resting on the floor. The other hand supported his face. That eye peered down at his feet.
So, what do we think? Looking at Gorel, what do you think? How does he look to us?
He was slumped over the stool.
Yeah, what does that mean? Slumped over the stool.
When you are taking a rest and you are very relaxed, no? You are
exactly.
You are like there.
The word is
like a toy. I don't know.
Yeah, like a toy. The word is limp. L-I-M-P. Limp.
Limp.
The opposite of stiff or hard is limp, like a toy. Limp, like a rag doll.
Okay.
So completely relaxed. And Daniel added sleeping with their eyes open. So he looks like he's dead. His eyes are open and he's completely relaxed. So the doctor knows something's going on. Keep going, Laura.
Murray ran over to him, shouting, "Lang, Avery! Get the orderliest." He reached Worrell and pulled him back off the stool. "Lang!" he called again. Lang was still staring at the clock, his body in the stiff, unreal posture of a waxwork dummy.
And waxworks.
Waxworks.
What is that? Do you know? The famous museum in the UK, in London. What's that famous wax museum?
I don't know.
Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London.
In Baker Street.
Is it on Baker? I have no idea. Never been. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
So a dummy. What is a dummy? A wax dummy.
A dummy is when you see the window of a shop.
Right.
You have figure there with the dresses that they are going to sell, no?
Yeah.
And it's
they
just
model
like
the
a
clothes.
model. Yes.
Yeah. So they appear like dummies. They appear like wax dummies. So they're not really dead because there's some of them are still like stiff looking at the clock. So they're not dead because they would be like on the floor, but not all of them are. Okay. So, Sylvia, let's take this next little part of 5, and then we'll go on to the ending.
Yes. Morley, let Gore look back on the sofa. Laneige
No, not look. Look again.
lower back.
Loll back, right. Loll back. When you loll, you're relaxed.
Okay.
Low back.
Low
Lean back. Low back.
on the sofa, leaned over and glanced at Long's face. He crossed the Harvey, stretched out behind.
Wait. Careful when you're reading. That name is Avery.
Avery,
Right.
stretched out behind the magazine, and jerked his shoulder. Avery's head bobbed stiffly. The magazine slipped and fell from his hands, leaving his fingers curly in front of his face.
Curled. Okay, picture that for a second. In your own words, simple English, in your own words, what did he do? What happened? This is just like out of a movie. You can visualize it. What did he do to the patient? Can you picture this in your mind?
He has the magazine in his hand and...
Right. And the doctor does what? He jerks his shoulder. What does it mean, jerks his shoulder?
Move his shoulder?
Exactly. So it's like he's trying to wake him up. He shakes him. And what happens to the magazine?
Fall down.
And what happens to his hand? Does his hand fall down? His fingers are curled in front of his face.
So he move his hands in front of his face.
He doesn't move his hands, no. His fingers are curled in front of his face, just like when he was holding the magazine. But the magazine fell. So he's stiff in the same position, only the magazine fell. It's like he's a mannequin in the window of a shop. He's completely stiff. See what I mean?
Yes.
Keep going.
Morley stopped over Avery's legs to the gramophone. He switched it on, gripped the volume control and swung it.
Volume control.
Control and swung it round to full amplitude. Above the elderly room door, an alarm bell shrilled out through the silence.
The word is shrilled. Shrilled. So, shrill. Do you think that's a pleasant sound or not?
No.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant
it's more
sound.
like an alarm.
It's like that nasty alarm sound. So he turns on the alarm. And that brings us to the end of part 5. Part 6 is quite short, and it's the end of our story. Let's find out how the story ends, shall we? Let's see. So let's go to Ishmael and then Rus. Ishmael, let's find out what happens at the end of our story. Take it away. Uh-oh, I don't hear you, Ishmael. Are you there? Hello, Ishmael? Hello? Hello? Uh-oh, Ishmael is asleep. Rus, are you there?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you take this?
Weren't you with them? Neil asked sharply. No, Morley admitted. They were standing by the door of the emergency ward. 2 orderlies had just dismantled the electrotherapy unit and were wheeling the console away on a trolley. Outside in the gymnasium, a quiet traffic of nurses and interns moved past. All but a single bank of arc lights had been switched off, and the gymnasium seemed like a deserted stage at the end of a performance. I slipped into the office to pick up a few test cards, he explained. I wasn't gone more than 10 minutes. You were supposed to watch them continually, Neil snapped. Not to wander off by yourself whenever you felt like. What do you think we had the gym and this entire works set up for?
So, in the story, they thought they were being watched or listened to. Were they really being watched, Rus? The patients thought that the gramophone was a secret microphone and that they were being recorded. Was that true? What do you think?
I don't have any idea. Because I don't understand what's the point of this subject.
What's the point of? Sorry.
The subject. What about this subject? Because I joined late. John?
Yeah. The subject? You mean
yeah,
the story or the question I asked?
yeah. I mean, the subject in question.
Oh, the subject is, you mean why we're reading the story?
Yes.
Oh, we're reading the story because it's a great story. That's the reason why. The language is difficult. The language is difficult, but what I want to do is ask you some important questions so that you get the general idea. And don't worry so much about the individual words. Because some of the language is difficult, but the general idea we can follow, and we can still get the message that the author is trying to say. Okay? So, we did a little bit of review, so you could see the other parts of the story. And what I'm asking you here, but I can ask the whole class if you like.
Okay.
Earlier in the story, right when the walls started to cave in, right when the gymnasium started to get smaller, which apparently happened in the mind of the patients. Apparently it didn't happen in real life. At that moment, they thought they were being listened to and watched. So class, were they really being watched? Was that really an experiment? The walls caving in? What do you think, class?
No, I think it's in their minds.
It seems like everything happened in their minds.
Yes.
And we know that because Neil, the main doctor, is angry at what's his name? Morley. He's angry at Morley.
It's telling off Morley.
What's that?
Telling off.
He's telling him off, right?
Telling him off. Yes.
So that means that they couldn't have been watched. There's no way that they were watched because Morley left the room for 10 minutes and everything changed. So that means they weren't being watched. Even the monitoring, even the video and audio that they thought they were being recorded and watched, even that was in their imagination. Didn't happen for real.
Yes.
So that leaves a very important question. Is it a coincidence that the doctor left the room and the patients suddenly had this mass delusion? Is it a coincidence? I think no.
No.
I think it's not. Let me see. Ishmael, are you there? What's happening with Ishmael today? So I think we're back to you, Daniel. We're going back to the top of the room. Let's find out what happens next.
It was a little after 5:30 a.m. After working hopelessly on the three men for a couple of hours, he was close to exhaustion.
Good.
He looked down at them, lying inertly in their cots.
You can say it like this. Inert. Inertly.
Inertly. Lying inertly in their cots, canvas seats buckled up to their chins. They had barely changed, but their eyes were open and unblinking, and their face had the empty, reflexless look of psychic zero.
Psychic zero.
Psychic zero.
I have no idea what that means. Psychic zero. But I guess it's not good. Keep going.
An intern bent over Lang, thumbing a hypodermic. Morley stared at the floor. "I think they could have gone anyway." "How can you say that?" Neil clamped his lips together. He felt frustrated and impotent. He knew Morley was probably right. The three men were in terminal withdrawal, unresponsive to either insulin or electrotherapy, and a Bayes-type catatonic seizure didn't close in out of nowhere, but as always refused to admit anything without absolute proof. He led the way into his office and shut the door. "Sit down." He pulled a chair out for Morley and prowled it off round the room, slamming a fist into his palm.
What do you think Neil is going to say to Morley here?
Nothing good.
Nothing good. So, does he blame Morley for the patients?
Sorry?
Does he blame Morley for what happened to the patients? Do you think he blames him? Does Neil blame Morley? Does Dr. 1, Neil, blame Dr. 2, Morley, for the state of the patients? Do you think?
I think he wasn't his fault. No?
I don't think it was his fault either. But maybe Neil thinks it is.
Ah.
Maybe. Let's go back to, I think next was Laura. I can't remember. No, Saud, sorry. So you were next. Take it away, Saud.
Okay. All right, John. What is it? Morley picked up one of the test cards lying on the desk, balanced it on a corner and spun it between his fingers. Phrases swam through his mind. Tentative or tentative
Tentative.
tentative
Tentative and yeah, good.
and uncertain like blind fish. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "Reactivation of the infantile imago, a regression into the great, slumbering womb, or to put it more simply, still just fit of Vigo." Is this English?
I have no idea. I have no idea what any of this means. This is doctor talk.
Go on. Morley shrugged.
Shrugged.
Continual consciousness is more than the brain can stand. Any single repeated often enough eventually loses its meaning. Try saying the word sleep 50 times. After a point, the brain's self-awareness dulls. It's no longer able to grasp who or why it is, and it rides a drift.
Adrift means without direction, like on the ocean, adrift. So, what's Morley trying to say? Morley is giving, he thinks he has an explanation. What is Morley trying to say? What's the reason for the state of the patients? This is an important point. Is it clear? Not so clear? What is Morley trying to say?
I think he wants to reprogram the patient.
Well, before we reprogram, the first thing is to understand why they're all catatonic. Catatonic means you're a vegetable. You just sit there. You don't think, nothing. You're just like an empty space. Yeah. Why are they all catatonic? Well, Morley is trying to say that it's because they don't sleep. He's trying to say that maybe by getting rid of sleep, the brain starts to forget what reality really is. It becomes used to, it turns it off, basically. This is his theory. I'm going to take this.
Malfunction.
What's that?
Malfunction.
Exactly, malfunction.
Playing up.
I'm going to take this next section because we're running out of time. So just to move this forward a little bit faster, because I want to make sure we get the reading done in this class. Bear with me for a second, then we'll go to Lara and Sylvia. What do we do then? Nothing, short of rescoring all the way down to lumbar 1. The nervous system can't stand narcotomy. Narcotomy is a word that does not really exist, by the way, not that I know of. In other words, putting drugs in their system wouldn't help. Neil shook his head. Oh, sorry, Neil shook his head. You're lost, he said curtly. Juggling with generalities isn't going to bring those men back. First, we've got to find out what happened to them, what they actually felt and saw. Morley frowned dubiously. That jungle is marked private. Even if you do, is a psychotic's withdrawal drama going to make any sense? Of course it will. However insane it seems to us, it was real enough to them. If we know the ceiling fell in or the gymnasium filled with ice cream or turned into a maze, we've got something to work on. He sat down on the desk. Do you remember that story of Chekhov's you told me about? The bet? Yes. So he's going to relate a short story that they talked about earlier, a story by the writer Chekhov. Laura, why don't you take it over from there?
Yes.
Let me get this on the screen. Go for it.
I read it last night. Curious is a lot nearer than what you are really trying to say that you know. He glanced around the office. This room in which the man is pinned for 10 years symbolizes the mind driving to the farthest limit of self-awareness. Something very similar happened to Avery, Gorrell and Lang. They must have reached a state beyond which they could no longer contain the idea of their own identity, but far from being unable to grasp the idea. I'd say that they were conscious of nothing else, like the man in the spherical mirror who can only see a single gigantic eye staring back at him.
A mirror, like when you go to the circus and they have those mirrors that distort everything. He's making an analogy.
So you think they withdraw is a straightforward escape from the eyes? The overwhelming ego?
Okay. Sylvia, why don't you take the next part? So now they're trying to speculate about what happened. Why did these people end up in this catatonic vegetable state? And we'll go over this in a minute. Keep going, Sylvia.
Not escape, Neil correct. The psychopathic never escapes from anything. He's much more sensible.
The psychotic.
Psychotic.
Because the psychopath is a killer. These aren't killers. They're psychotic. They're out of touch with reality.
Psychotic never escapes from anything. He's much more sensible. He merely readjusts reality to suit himself. Quite a trick to learn too. The room in Chekhov's story gives me an idea as to how they might have readjusted. Their particular equivalent of this room was the gym. I am beginning to realize it was a mistake to put them in there. All those lights blazing down, the huge floor, high walls. They merely
high walls.
High walls.
Yeah, good.
They merely exaggerate the sensation of overload. In fact, the gym might easily have become an external projection of their own egos. Neil drummed his fingers on the desk. My guess is that at this moment they are either striding around in there, the size of hundreds-foot giants. or else they have cut it down to their own dimensions. More probably that they have just pulled the gym in on themselves. Morley grinned blackly.
Bleakly.
Bleakly. So all we have got to do now is pump them full of honey and apomorphine and coax them out. Suppose they refuse? They won't, Neil said. You'll see. There was a rap on the door, and intern stuck his head through. Lang's coming out of it, Doctor. He's calling for you. Neil bounded out.
Okay. And we're going to have to stop there. So we didn't quite get to the end of the story, but we're almost there. Almost. What do you think Neil is going to find when he goes to meet Lang? What do you think is going to happen when he meets Lang? Lang has coming out of his catatonic state. Think it'll be good?
No.
What do you think is going to happen?
They are going to be zombies.
They're going to be zombies. But Lang seems like he's waking up. So right now, so zombies meaning they can move, but they can't think. Is that what you mean?
Okay.
Is that what you mean by zombies? They can move around, but they're just blanks?
They...
Like The Walking Dead? Could be. Well, let's do this. I think you're going to have to read the ending on your own. But
Okay.
if you're going to be here every Tuesday and Thursday, then I'll be more than happy to continue with the class.
Tuesday and Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday, same hour.
10 o'clock, no?
Yeah,
Well,
for you.
bye.
For you,
Okay.
10 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes.
let's do this. Let's read the ending on your own. I keep trying to put questions for you, but I haven't had time. But I will do it today. I'm going to put some comprehension questions for you to think about what you read, and we will start a new story, but we'll talk about this in the beginning of the next class. Particularly, I want to know what you think about...
Excuse me, teacher. Next story, it will be sci-fi.
No, it's whatever. In fact, if you have a suggestion, you send me a message. You can suggest stories too. I try to pick classic stories, okay? But if you have a suggestion, you let me know and we can work on it. I haven't decided which one we're going to do next, okay? I have to stop now to start the business class.
Okay.
I'll see you next Tuesday for this at
For
10,
sure.
10 Central Time, and I will put some comprehension questions there for you to think about. I'll send you the link later today. Okay,
Perfect.
come back for the business class in 1 minute.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.